Hi, this is Morse Lake Monsters, Chapter 2, Mike's Woods in Berry County, Michigan, 1977. Morse Lake Monsters is a recount of my childhood Bigfoot Sasquatch encounters that started in 1975 at Strawberry Lake Campground in Everett, Michigan, and started again after we moved to an old farmhouse in 1976 in Alto, Michigan. Somehow, they managed to find me. The monsters in Morse Lake weren't the Sasquatch. They were the people. I will put a link in the description below for Chapter 1, Strawberry Lake in Everett, Michigan. Alright, after that year of Strawberry Lake in 1975, it was the end of summer, and winter went by, and in the spring or sometime in the summer of 1976, while we were still living in Grand Rapids on Burke Street, they decided they're going to go look for a bigger house, and they found that house out in Alto and put an offer in it. And we knew we were going to move, and we didn't go out to Strawberry Lake that year. We went out camping out here to Gun Lake, where I live now, at one of the campgrounds out here. Just my dad and I that summer, and my sister did something else with my mom, or with one of her friends. And I think it was October 16th of 1976 is when we finally moved into that house out in Alto. The move from Grand Rapids, Michigan to Alto, Michigan on October 16th, 1976, about a half an hour southeast of Grand Rapids, Michigan, in the Caledonia School District area. Well, over October, since we moved there in 76, 77, being that winter, I didn't go down in the barns much. I didn't play down there a whole lot. I did a little bit in the fall, but in the winter, I was out sledding. I wasn't going in the barns much, and I don't remember seeing anything that time until it was about, I think it was spring of 77, that we started seeing some odd things that were happening on the field across the creek that was behind our house. It was behind the barns. There was an area where the local farmer was dropping his cattle and cows or whatever. They had PBB poisoning that year, from I think it was like 74 to 1981. There was a fertilizer that was mixed up with the feed, and all the cows were getting sick. For a while, they couldn't figure out what it was, and all these cows were dying. The state would come in these stake trucks and pick up these dead cows and bury them in a mass grave up in Kalkaska. But they would do that bi-weekly, and these farmers that pick out a place that's usually kind of swampy by a creek. I don't know why. They figured it'd just get cleaned out when it went through all that water, in the creek or something like that, through the swamp. But when we moved there, there was a pile of cows not far behind that big, huge barn, hay barn. And there was the creek back there, and that's where they put the cows. There's a house there now, but the house wasn't there back then. It was a cornfield, that was biannually different crops, like soybeans. And different animals were feeding back there. And we could see, like from our mudroom in the house, a couple times in the spring, what we thought were big dogs moving across that field there where the corn was still small in the spring. But we had really bad binoculars down there. It was really hard to see what it was, because back then, Sasquatch on all fours, nobody even knew about that, let alone Sasquatch. We weren't looking for that. We just thought they were enormous dogs. They were at a distance, and we could hardly see them, like I said. But we were seeing that, and then what I was seeing in the barns when I was playing in the hay, I'd get a glimpse of what I thought was a small dog, and I wasn't putting it together with anything else yet. And I still haven't made any friends out there. The area was really barren of, just residential houses. There were farmhouses, and they're all about a mile or so apart. And most of them weren't in operation, but some of them were still operating, like the one that was putting the cows back there. That was just north of us, not even a mile. They had quite a few cattle there at that place, and they were losing a lot of them. And there's, other things, like coyotes back there feeding on them too. So we're just thinking or seeing we're dogs. Of Archives, Michigan, Natural Resources, Department of Waste Management, PBB Animal Disposal Sites, 1974 through 1981. One of the worst agricultural disasters in the history of Michigan, and perhaps the entire country, took place in 1973. Dairy cattle began to experience health problems including decreased milk production, loss of appetite, skin changes, hair loss, and marked loss of weight. Many cows died. There was also a high incidence of stillbirths and neonatal deaths in calves born to such herds. It was not until April 1974 that the error was discovered and an unknown quantity of toxic chemical, PBB, was accidentally mixed and distributed into the farms around the state. Okay, in the early that spring of that year of 77, before what happened in Mike's Woods that I'm getting to, there was other incidents where I thought I was seeing a dog. One of them was early off before I had any friends down south of me or close by. One of my friends lived about 3 miles away, and I rode my bike there, and I stopped somewhere up in one of these hills up there that was woods, and there was an old house across from there. I thought what I saw was a dog coming after me, and it was too big to be a dog. It was just, another one of those big dog incidents. But I didn't think much about it other than I wanted to get it, out of there. And I went over to my friend Darwin's, and we played over there. And he lived near Thornapple River, and the back of his property went all the way up to this river, and he had a pond back there, and we played. And nothing in particular happened, and I went home. The next day on the school bus, he comes in and tells us, guys that are around in the school bus there, my friends and I, and my schoolmates, I guess you'd say, about he saw a little hairy man back there eating a fish, and it came after him. And we all kind of laughed about it. And I did get one of my friends that was on the bus to remember that a little bit, but he didn't want to spend much time thinking about it, but he admitted he remembered something like that. And I guess that's what happened is he followed me over to Darwin's. That was just another one of the weird incidents other than me seeing him in the hay barn when I was building the forts, and that was just absolutely creepy too. This is a message off of Facebook from one of the guys named Doug that was on the bus at the time when we were kids, and I asked him, okay, do you remember him talking about some hairy, small Bigfoot-like creature he saw eating a fish back on his property when he was a kid? It seems like I remember him saying something like that once. He told us on the bus one day, and we all laughed at him. And Doug's reply is, yes, I remember him telling us that, but not much of the details. Him and I used to hike back there a lot, and I couldn't really get him to open up on any more of that. Okay, in the early that spring of that year of 77, before what happened in Mike's Woods that I'm getting to, there was other incidents where I thought I was seeing a dog. One of them was early off before I had any friends down south of me or close by. One of my friends lived about 3 miles away, and I rode my bike there, and I stopped somewhere up in one of these hills up there that was woods, and there was an old house across from there. I thought what I saw was a dog coming after me, and it was too big to be a dog. It was just, another one of those big dog incidents. But I didn't think much about it other than I wanted to get it, out of there. And I went over to my friend Darwin's, and we played over there. And he lived near Thornapple River, and the back of his property went all the way up to this river, and he had a pond back there, and we played. And nothing in particular happened, and I went home. The next day on the school bus, he comes in and tells us, guys that are around in the school bus there, my friends and I, and my schoolmates, I guess you'd say, about he saw a little hairy man back there eating a fish, and it came after him. And we all kind of laughed about it. And I did get one of my friends that was on the bus to remember that a little bit, but he didn't want to spend much time thinking about it, but he admitted he remembered something like that. And I guess that's what happened, is he followed me over to Darwin's. That was just another one of the weird incidents, other than me seeing him in the hay barn when I was building the forts, and that was just absolutely creepy too. This is a message off of Facebook from one of the guys named Doug that was on the bus at the time when we were kids, and I asked him, okay, do you remember him talking about some hairy, small Bigfoot-like creature he saw eating a fish back on his property when he was a kid? It seems like I remember him saying something like that once. He told us on the bus one day, and we all laughed at him. And Doug's reply is, yes, I remember him telling us that, but not much of the details. Him and I used to hike back there a lot, and I couldn't really get him to open up on any more of that. Shortly before my dad had died in 2015, he told me about a lot of the things that happened. One of the things he told me about was when he was walking the dogs at night before he went to bed. He came across something with red glowing eyes feeding on those cows down at the creek. He never told anybody about it. This is the hay barn today, and over here, back by that house back there, there's a creek, and that's where they used to put the cows. At the time, and it was so remote out there then, I met this one friend at some church thing during mid-August in the middle of the week, and for some reason we're both wearing our school clothes that we're going to get for the next month, and we had to go to school. And he had ended up coming over to my house, and we didn't find much to do. There wasn't game systems and stuff back then, except for Pong and a black and white TV up in my room or something like that. And that wasn't much fun for very long. And we went to go play in the barns. I showed him around down there, but he couldn't get dirty because he was wearing his good clothes. So we didn't stay in the barns too long. We went walking down by the creek and looked at the dead cow pile, and we went further on back. Back where there's a pond, quite a ways back where the creek led to before it went all the way down to my neighbors to the south. It kind of twisted back through this field. There's both sides of it were agriculture, but like where it went down to the creek, there was plenty of trees around it, mostly birch, and there was a pond down there that was spring fed. And the farmers had that owned the land had a little retreat area down there with a little dock, floating dock in the pond back then, and a little shed. And we went back there, and the window was broken, the front door, and we went to look in it, and something ran out of a hole in the back of that shed, and it looked like, by the time we were always seeing this, it was always running away from us. We wouldn't get a good front view. And it just looked like a really stocky dog running off, and I'm telling my friend Mike, I'm going like, well, we've been seeing these things, these dogs, all these wild animals feeding on these cows down here. And so we headed back to the house, didn't think it was a good idea to be sticking around where these funny looking dogs were, and told my parents about it. And they suggested we just go down to Coldwater Park, which is a 1.5 to 2 miles down the road, which would be south down Morse Lake Road, and go down there with the bikes, which were 2 adult-sized bikes, and Mike and I were pretty short, and we even had a hard time reaching the pedals on either one of these bikes. And these are the 2 old bikes Mike and I had to ride to start our journey. as we went down to explore Coldwater Park and then to the Middelville State Game Area woods. We made our way down there, and we went up and down a couple of the roads there, and we decided to go to the woods, which were even further down south, and that was a total of about 3 miles, and it was an uphill grade most of the way too. And we were pretty tired, but I think by the time we got there, we went down a couple logging roads that are just like little trails now. Some are still logging roads, but most of them are closed off anyway. But back then, people would drive back there and go park and do whatever and party. And, we were finding, a couple vans with hippies back there, listening to music and doing whatever. And we wanted to, get away from that. We went down to the next 2-track, and we went back as far as we could. And it started turning into a trail, and we found all these bushes, like honeysuckle bushes and whatnot, really big ones, all covering like a couple acres. And it looked like there was an opening, like where, something was going in there that was pretty good size, and we went to go check it out. This is the art I did of Mike and I checking out this bush, and this is actual footage of the group of bushes that still existed up until a few years ago when the DNR plowed them all over because they found that there was something living in there. And we crawled in. It led to another, and they were kind of like mushroomed out in the middle, where the bush would go up like this, and they'd go pretty large, like about 6 feet out and like about 3.5 feet up or something like that. And there was like a clear circle ground around most of these ones, but they're like connected with another bush to another bush, so it was like going from room to room. And we came up in this one that had like a blanket, like a tattered blanket or a sleeping bag in one corner of it, and then like a pile of sticks that were piled in individual sizes, and then bottles, glass bottles, and like rocks and everything all neatly piled up. And then there was a pile of magazines, like Playboy and like car magazines, I think it was. And on the wall of like the branches of the bush that made a wall, there was like pictures that you would find in like a picture frame that you would get with like a family in there, and you usually throw it away. And those were stuck all over the wall, along with Christmas ornaments and Christmas tinsel, and just like a whole bunch of weird shiny things like bottle tabs that back then you used to pull a tab out of the cans back then, and pop cans in, beer cans alike, and people just throw the tabs out there, and there were these little shiny things that, I don't even have one here, but I did find one in the cans back there. Those were all over the wall of this thing, and we thought it was like a bum's hideout. And we didn't spend much time in there. We had a couple bags of snacks that we brought with us, and we went out of the bushes in the back and stopped there for a while, and we ate these snacks. Now this is the art that I did of what Mike and I found inside that one room inside of that big bush. All the weird things stuck on the wall, and the blankets and the magazines. In the woods, deeper in the woods, and eventually we found a little pond where these other 2 kids were there. One was older than us. Mike and I were both about 10, and there was another kid there about our age, and an older boy. One was named Russ, and the other one was also named Mike. We'll call him Mike C. We visited with them for a while, and they were like building a camp. The older boy, Russ, was building a fire pit. He was gathering rocks, and we helped him for a while, and he built a fire pit, while the other boy, Mike, was fishing. This is the encounter area in the spring. This is the tree with the steps in it. This is the encounter area in the summer. is about where we set up camp back here when I was a kid. And before they put the dam in over Algonquin, there's a lot more water flowing back here. And there was a creek coming off the back of this. Alright, this is all that's left now. This is the art I did of the area, what it looked like back then when we met these other kids back there. Russ there's gathering some rocks for the fire pit. And to the right of him is Mike K, my friend, is helping him get some rocks. Mike C is up there on that big branch fishing, and I'm climbing up the tree to get over to him. That was the site where we're at in the state game area there in Middleville and Berry County in 1977. And we decided after we did that, it was getting a little bit later and they're, setting up camp. We thought it would be cool if we went and got my gear. My dad had just sold the camper that we had at Strawberry Lake, the pop-up camper. He just said we weren't going to go camp anymore. We already lived out in the country. And he bought me this goofy little 2-man orange tent. And I went and got that. We rode all the way back to my house. And my friend Mike had to ask his parents if he could go. And we're both timed. Times were different back then. And they didn't think it was a dangerous woods, and it was only about 3 miles from the house. But yeah, I know nobody would do this today. But they decided it was okay because we were going to go meet these other boys that are already down there. And it took a while for Mike's mom to bring over his backpack and a change of clothes. And we packed the bikes up, and we put the tents and some sleeping bags on the back of the bike racks and tried to hold them down with bungee cords and get back before it got dark. And we got up there and it was getting dark, and we ended up going down the wrong trail that looped around. There's one that goes like in the length of this woods and ends up in about in the same spot. And by the time we figured that out, we almost couldn't see, especially in the woods. And we found a spot in the pines to set up. When we decided we'd go find the other 2 guys, in the morning. And we eventually got to sleep after we, cleared out a spot and set the tent up. And it was dark. And we started hearing first Russell screaming for Mike, which is also my friend's name. His friend's name was Mike. And he's screaming at the top of his lungs, like really convincingly, like something's really happened. And then we could hear the other boy, Mike, screaming. And then we heard other sounds that I can't explain besides whooping and like other, jungle sounds, almost primate sounds. And it sounded like it was coming towards our tent, and we heard a lot of crashing. The first thing we thought was, they're just playing a prank on us, or is he calling my friend Mike? They're trying to find us. And then we were convinced it was, a prank of some sort. But we're getting scared because we're hearing these sounds and crashing through the woods that just didn't make any sense to us. And we left, my friend Mike and I, and grabbed our flashlights. We left the tent there and all our gear. We got on the bikes and went all the way back to our house. And we got back, I think it was sometime after the evening news was getting over, and my parents were watching Carson. And they, after we knocked on the door and they unlocked it, and they thought it was kind of funny that we chickened out and came back. And we told them I had to go get the gear in the morning. And we went to bed thinking, they got us pretty good with that joke, they scared us. But we had to go back the next morning to go get our gear, right? This is the backwards camera filming the exact area in the pines where Mike and I had set up the tent after we couldn't find the other boys. Now this is the art I did of Russell and Mike while Mike C was being taken by the Sasquatch while they're at the campfire. This other art here is my friend Mike K and I in our tent after we hear all the commotion and it's coming towards us. So we got up and we rode all the way up that gradual hill up to that spot to the woods. And we got to just about where it turns into state land there by 108th Street, and Morse Lake turns into Harris Creek. And the road was blocked off. There was a Channel 13 local news crew there talking to Russell in the middle of the road. I think it was Lee Vandermeer that was talking to him. Because I remember, because my mother actually ended up recording it, because my friend Mike and I went around the back and got on camera, on purpose. This is before we even went to go look for our gear, even, we're going to ask about it. And there was an ambulance that pulled in. There was cop cars there. Now this is the art of what we saw when we got up to that corner. There was the news crew, WZZM 13. There was local police and state troopers. There was an ambulance, people on horseback, people with search dogs, people searching with bullhorns, and you could see Mike and I sneaking in there behind that cop car to get in the camera there. If I could ever find this copy of this video again from this news channel, it would look exactly like this. And the people that were searching also had megaphones, and they were yelling for Mike, 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 looking for Mike, all screaming for this boy. And after Russell got done talking to the news crew, and he said to the news crew that his friend Mike was taken by a hairy bum, because we told Russell about that bush that we found, and we thought it was a bum's hideout, that where bums were lived in that thing. And it was dark when it happened, and that's what Russell told the news crew. So they found the bush with the magazines in it, and they went after the guy that had the name of the magazines too. But we found that out later. When we got done talking to Russell, when he was done talking to the news crew, we asked one of the cops if we could go in that area and go get our tent, because we were there last night and we left our gear there when we heard weird noises. And this cop radios somebody, and they told us we had to wait to talk to this guy. Well, he comes back, he's a Native American, and he called himself John Redcorn. And this was long before the TV show with the cartoon character in there. This is 1977. And that wasn't his real name. His real name was Jerry, and I can't tell you his last name. I found that out later, because we're going to see him again later. John Redcorn. Okay, this guy John Redcorn, he comes over and talks to Mike K and I, and he asked us a lot of questions about being there and what we heard that night. And he writes them all down on a piece of paper, and he says that he'll bring our gear to our house, my house, later. So Mike K and I rode back to my house. He eventually went home, and later on, I think later on that day, this guy John Redcorn, he showed up at my house with my gear, and he told me that they found this other Mike C, the other kid named Mike that was taken, and they found him without his clothes, and he was shaken up and couldn't talk, and we could probably go see him in the next day or so. And we did go see him in the next day or so, but that was actually the last time that I saw him for the rest of my life. I still haven't even found him. Because shortly after that incident, it was the barn incident, which is going to be the next chapter. And the government guy, John Redcorn, and Jerry, he comes back. Up next in Chapter 3 will be the cornfield and barn encounters, just like they're going to appear in the book when I get it done. Stay tuned. Hey, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. It helps the channel. Appreciate it.